I am Games, and these are opinions. For the most part, Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu is just a remake of Pokemon Yellow for the Switch, but fans of the original may at first be off-put by the reality of it. You no longer battle Pokemon in order to catch them, but instead do so via nearly the exact same mechanics of Pokemon Go. And yet even still, your entire party will gain experience from every catch. EXP sharing is on automatically, and Pokemon are more readily available than ever before, so putting together a full party takes a matter of seconds. While you can tackle the game single player just like back in the day, you can also do it co-op style now. And the second player will actually fight in battles alongside you in a 2-on-1 mechanic, utterly trivializing whatever tiny modicum of challenge might have been left. Looking at the game this way, it might come off as the most patronizingly baby mode game in the series so far, and leave you scratching your head as to whether Nintendo just thinks that modern kids and normies are somehow too stupid to comprehend the incredibly low skill floor of Pokemon. But once you really get under the hood of what's going on here, there's more to it than meets the eye, and in many ways it even makes more sense than the structure of the original game when you think about it from the standpoint of the gotta catch 'em all mantra. It used to be exceedingly rare that anyone actually bothered trying to catch every single Pokemon because it was quite a bit of a hassle. But now the challenge is not so much about catching all the unique types as it is about catching the best possible instance of said types. The game encouraged you to go out of your way to catch endless amounts of the same Pokemon in search of the one with the best IVs, and since you can now have open access to your deposit box at all time, switching Pokemon in and out of your party can be done on the fly. If any strange mechanic made the intentions here the most obvious, it's that you're no longer asked to name a Pokemon as soon as you catch it, but you can just change the names whenever the hell you want. Yes, this can be said to infringe on one of the thematic tenets of the old games. The idea that you're meant to develop a special bond with the specific Pokemon that you'd captured, and their strength doesn't really matter emotionally. But the series never really delivered on that idea in the first place. Realistically, it was always on the player to fill in the gaps that way. And since players were already able to hunt for the monsters with the best IVs and amass a giant PC full of repeats, there wasn't much need to make it any more difficult for them. If you don't want to play the game that way, then, well, don't. That sentiment kind of pervades Pokemon Let's Go. If this was always supposed to be a series about letting the player express themselves and how they play, then Let's Go opens up the opportunity for them to do so more easily than ever. Consider the quality of life features of not needing an HM slave to actually be in your party at all times since you have a PC box on hand, of actually having the option to skip cutscenes, and useful features of later games like being able to reuse TMs. All of this actively gives you more on-the-fly options for how to live your Pokemon experience. Yes, the fact that you don't have to work nearly as hard to have the perfect party does diminish some of the reward of accomplishing it, but there's already a mountain of Pokemon games which you can play that way. Why not have one where you can casually pick up and do things completely differently from how you did before without having to make such a huge concerted effort towards doing so? Getting to see enemy Pokemon on the map allows you to customize your experience even further by reducing the likelihood of unwanted random encounters considerably. Having the ability to let any Pokemon follow you around on the map and getting to see them all drawn to scale for once is nearly worth the price of admission in itself, as is the ability to ride your own Pokemon finally if they're big enough. The only thing I wish I had the ability to control was getting stuck with Eevee or Pikachu as an automatic partner for the whole game, but it may well be a fair trade when all three starters are catchable like in Yellow. Just as importantly as the ability to make the game easier and breezier for yourself is the ability to make it harder. Just because catching Pokemon has been streamlined doesn't mean it isn't tactical, and the better a Pokemon is, the more hoops you'll have to jump through to get it. Much ado is made about the fact that Oak's assistant wouldn't let you challenge a gym unless you possessed a Pokemon which the gym leader is weak to, but this doesn't mean you actually have to use that Pokemon on the gym leader, and catching a Pokemon takes all of 5 seconds. Plus, the rules are actually different depending on the gym. Plenty of the classical methods of making the game harder for yourself should still apply to this one, and I'm sure with enough of these mechanics having shifted the ways they have, plenty of other ways could be invented. Really though, if I were to criticize Let's Go seriously, it would be for how dated the graphical and sound presentation feel on a technical level in a $60 game. It really seems like they built Let's Go as a handheld, which isn't unfair, but how could it possibly cost $60 to play what is 90% a Game Boy game with updated graphics which are hardly a step up from the 3DS games? The fact that nothing was done to update the level geometry is almost laughable, and it's extremely obvious that this game could never have gotten away with being made from scratch in 2018 without the nostalgia goggles of an entire generation whose mental image of Pokemon Red and Blue is deeply deeply engraved in their psyche. It's kind of sad to see this regression after Sun and Moon finally made the environments feel more organic to the third dimension, following X, Y, and Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire having kept things classically linear, though at least the game does widen the roads out to give you some more breathing room. Nevertheless, as a proper Doomer Gen 1 nostalgia baby, I can't hate it. Whether it looks budget or not, it's aesthetically pleasing, and I can't help but get excited seeing all these familiar locales once again updated into a whole new realm of graphical beauty. Every small detail added is like a mind blow, from the incredibly comfy cutscenes where you babysit a slowpoke, to the addition of life-size Pokemon chilling out with their trainers all over town, to the magazine stands in the Pokemon centers. A lot of what gets me excited about this game I feel would have no reason to even register in a new player's brain, but then how many new players of Pokemon even exist as compared to the nostalgia-blind obsessives like me? Nintendo supposedly made Let's Go primarily to entreat new players, but the game doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like it was made for the kind of people who'd flip out as soon as a Clefable appeared on the map at Mount Moon and go rushing to catch it. It wouldn't make sense for Bulbasaur to be a rare catch that you need to lure to find in Forbidden Forest unless you were already predisposed to excitement at the prospect of catching Bulbasaur. Too much of this game is built around sprinkling exciting surprises into the tried and true nostalgic experience of replaying Red and Blue for the millionth time for me to really buy that it wasn't made for man-children like me. And I'm honestly glad to have it. I feel like this game fulfills a role that I didn't know the Pokemon series needed, a casually approachable adventure which I can really take my time with. Playing through a Pokemon game is usually more of a concentrated experience, in spite of the way that it tries to feel like a bigger open exploration one. I, like many fans, tend to blow off most of the side crap that the newer games offer and just go straight for putting together a decent team and blowing away the Pokemon League. But Let's Go gives me very different priorities. Funnily enough, level grinding is actually harder in this game than before if you're trying to maintain a balanced party, since you can't just get into a battle and blow the enemy away with a single attack from your overleveled main while swapping others in and out. Instead, catching Pokemon is a linearly more challenging experience the farther you get, since it relies on you as a player to improve your catching skills instead of giving yourself greater avatar strength to do something that's usually just as easy every time. Moreover, since you have so many options of which Pokemon to use, you'll be more inclined to swap them in and out of the party regularly, which makes it harder to keep them all evenly leveled. Anyone who's tried to actively catch every Pokemon in the newer games will know how much more of a challenge this is, and in Let's Go that challenge is placed front and center. Ergo, you can almost casually make the game a lot more difficult for yourself without even making a concerted effort to do so if you're a longtime player who looks at the experience with certain goals in mind. And yet, because it's so easy to make your own decisions about which Pokemon you're going to run into, and since catching them is more of a reflexive activity than a thoughtful one, you can easily glide into a smooth autopilot while playing this game, especially if you grew up with Red and knew everything you have to do. The result is possibly the comfiest Pokemon experience to date. Chilling with a friend and just blasting through every battle so you can get to the ride Pokemon, then riding them around looking at the newly prettified towns is an experience I can't explain the appeal of beyond knowing that it's a consequence of my age, and the way that seeing the world this way fills in the gaps of my imagination to make the town somehow realer than they ever felt before. All in all, I really like this game. I don't think every Pokemon fan will like it, but I think most of the ones who expected to truly revile it will be shocked of how much they don't. We're still going to be playing this game for a while on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern for the I Am Games stream, so tune in for that, and for the Thursday Chrono Cross and the Friday party streams while you're at it. Scope the merch too, and if you're gonna buy this game on Amazon anyways, use my link so I can get $5. And never forget to always remember to be the games you want to see. I Am Games, signing out.